We've got, I'm just going to read this so that it doesn't have to go around the routing list. This is from Hope House. On behalf of Hope House, thank you so much for your generous $4,000 that supports our Healthy Relationship Program, and teen moms receive counseling and mental health support they need in the aftermath of COVID-19. Your financial gift makes it possible for our moms to continue these services free of cost as they work to build a stable future for themselves and their children. And as they receive support by many by way of counseling, healthy relationships, classes, and self-care, personal growth classes, they're always accomplishing goals like graduating with these GED diplomas too. Thank you for believing in our Hope House. And then I see we have a thank you from Brothers Redevelopment, BRI, and was at a meeting with the Jeffco mayors last week. And one of them knows the people that run this, and they don't have enough places to help. So if anyone knows places that need whatever these folks do, they're looking for places to serve. So just, we'll shout that out. Then we have had some requests from counselors, and let me just go down these quickly. We've had a request to have both of the county sheriffs come and talk to us. And let me just race around, starting with Counselor Opie, and just say yes or no.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
We've had a request to have a study session on homelessness.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Never mind.
Seven's good. And then we had a request for daycare from both counties.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I ask specifically what I mean, so it's just to get the actual county partners, because I thought the request was specific daycare programs. So I guess I'm curious.
So the request is from ECPAC and their Jefferson County counterpart to present to council what's had the state of childcare overall in the city and how the city can help. They do a lot of programs that benefit families and businesses.
Yeah, be open to that.
And Councilor Izadia, as City Manager Andrews and I talked, we always talk before a meeting, and we're going to start up talking before an agenda goes out. But because in our strategic planning, we talk about partnerships of all kinds. So I think as we want to talk to different groups, does it make sense at a broader range? Do we need some other people there too to hear everything? So that just needs to be in the back of our head, and that's all we talked about. Councilor Smith. Yes.
Please.
Sure.
Okay. Then there was a request for extra table for $1,000 for the Ed Moss roast.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Abstain. Yeah, but you're not putting on the roast.
Yeah, he is.
Okay, then abstain.
Okay. All right. So we're a go on everything, and don't have the agenda in front of me. So, City Manager, do you have anything for us?
No, I just want to make sure that we answer the questions that we received earlier. So if each of the councilors wanted to ask those, we will have staff. We have staff here to answer them.
I saw Councilor Baker and Normella. If there were others, then just speak up after those two ask their questions. Councilor Baker?
Sure. So 8B, this is to buy $3 million worth of software with a recurring charge of roughly $500,000 every year after that. We've been running since, I just learned this with the mayor the other day, we've been running on our own in-house software from 86 to now, which is truly an amazing record. 36 years where we were in charge of the software and we controlled it. And boy, whoever wrote those did a good service to the city. But also at that time, it was said that the state used to collect the sales tax and really remit our share back to us. So how much does the state charge us to do that?
Deputy Dore to help you, Councilor Baker.
The question was, how much would the state of Colorado charge? No city has returned since the time of establishment of home rule authorities in Colorado to being state collected. So there's no goal for us to understand how much the state might charge. This is a real pillar of the home rule authorities of cities across the state of Colorado. So we don't know if they would even accept us back to state level collection. This would involve a pretty intense and complicated level of discussion, feasible, and then what such a cost might be. But relative to that, we should just consider the potential lost audit revenue and the lost enforcement and collections revenue. Our staff is between $3 to $5 million a year in enforcement and audit revenue. So that would be a substantial component, whether or not to return to state collection. So again,
Really, why would that be a loss?
well, we can't understand that the state would perform the same level of attention to auditing and
Well,
enforcement.
I mean,
and
wouldn't we
collections.
do that ourselves? Wouldn't we maintain a really audit and enforcement?
That might the state used to performing those services for statutory cities or home rule don't select their own sales tax. To have an all functions covered. If they were collecting for a statutory city, that's what we're experiencing now. It could be that some hybrid might be possible, but I would doubt that the state has the opportunity to, perform the same level of audit and enforcement. We could, of course, potentially negotiate some hybrid, but again, this is a real pillar of home rule authority and one that staff couldn't support returning to a state level of collection. We think that our total revenue as a city would decrease, even net of a decrease.
How much does it charge? How much does it charge? I mean, the statutory cities.
Well, I think it's a percentage of the revenues, a couple of a percent, depending on the size of the statutory cities. But again, those cities have the same tax base as the state. Our city would have a different tax base, and that could be a complicating factor, and I would think increase the cost. So for example, our city residents have chosen to tax the sale of groceries in our city. That's not a taxable item at the state level, so that matrix would be different and potentially a complicating factor to it.
So then do each of these entities, do our business people have to file a tax report with the state and a tax report with RTD and a tax report with the scientific district and a tax report with the baseball district and a tax report with the county they're in and a tax report with us?
No, so there are just either the state collects all of the special district sales taxes, if I could just say it that way. And then the home rule municipalities, then those companies do have to have an account and remit taxes at the local level. They're used to doing that at City and County of Denver, Aurora, Broomfield, Lakewood, et cetera. So yes, and they're doing that now. They've been doing that since 1986 in Westminster as well.
Right, okay, and the counties?
So the counties, the states collect on behalf of the
So
counties
the
in
states
Colorado.
even collect on the county?
They do.
Because in some ways I see some real advantages. And as long as we maintained our audit and we maintained our enforcement thing, I think it'd make it easier. Because right now you're telling me they have, our really businesses have to file 2 reports. Well, I should ask this of the mayor. So you file 2 reports.
I file one with the state and they collect all the things that he read off. And it's very simple as you just plug in your numbers and it adds it up for you and it tells you what you owe and how you pay and you send it off.
Gotcha.
In fact, the successor in the request for proposals process is the same firm that provides the service to the state. of Colorado. So the two systems will look and feel and operate identically for businesses in Westminster.
I think there might be some benefit in exploring that because then we wouldn't have to buy $500,000 worth of software every year. That's what we'll have to buy under this new system, right?
Yes, that's pretty typical. Again, the state, city and county of Denver, this system is installed at the cities of Aurora, Boulder, and Lakewood. So and Denver, beg your pardon. So pretty consistent software and a proven commercial off-the-shelf system. I think what you're describing is something that a number of legislators have taken up with the Colorado Municipal League and a number of House representatives and Senate representatives for a number of years, and those conversations could continue. But that's a very substantial prospect, but one that could be feasible, but probably years in the making potentially. In fact, a compromise already on the table has been for a centralized system that is getting off the ground. The state has about 20 companies already signed up. We'll be bringing forth an opportunity for Westminster to modify its code to allow that state system to opt into the city system that could provide some centralization for businesses. So any of those things is possible in the long-term future.
Okay. So is there any interest among council members that we really at least find out about this?
Councilor Seaman?
I understand Councilor Baker's thoughts on that. I do know too that the legislature worked diligently on the system for online processes so they can maximize that with our 700 taxing districts plus that we have in Colorado. So online sellers can have, and I would be in favor of that because it's a GPS tracking system. It's easier for businesses, but that's a small amount. I have a problem turning over anything to the state. That if we look at a system, and if any of you are an employer and you had multiple, and even myself, this last couple of years, getting unemployment checks where you shouldn't have, having bogus filings done on you, and millions of dollars out of the state coffer. That's going to affect businesses in the long run, even if it doesn't change our unemployment multiplier. It's going to have an effect that we're going to have to backfill. I lack confidence in the state system to manage money.
Can I just ask for clarification? So is it $500,000, whatever the budget is that annually, or is that just a one-time expenditure on the?
We have some upfront setup expenses to configure the system to our tax matrix and various code processes and procedures. And then there is an annual subscription cost. This is somewhat the new paradigm for acquisition of software as a service, where there's a sort of an annual cost. Everything is consistent and fixed from year to year with small inflationary cost increases. And this is the same for all of those cities in the state that I mentioned just a minute ago. So yes, and we will probably experience that with future implementations for other software tools at the city in the years to come.
It's that much annually for the subscription?
It is.
Yeah, I guess I misread that part. I thought it was just a one-time.
And it's like, the 790 for the initial setup.
Right.
But just curious, we don't know what the state would charge because the state's going to have to, depending on how they license it, they might have to pay extra licensing for us to be on their system, and they're going to take that into account with whatever cost on top of the labor. And so, that cost lives no matter what, because the way that software companies do things now is it's all service-based. And so that's the way that the world is going, because they want the reoccurring revenue. They don't want to sell you the software and then have a smaller maintenance like they used to. Now you're doing reoccurring revenue. Everybody's moving to that model. There are benefits to it though. You don't have some of the infrastructure and stuff costs that you have. So, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think we'd have the information. And I have to imagine some of that's going to play into whatever the state did tell you if you went and asked them.
Indeed. In addition, one of the things in our staff write-up on this is even just thinking of the cash flows. Money flows into the state from the tax returns. and then comes to the city the statutory city is an entire month later. So the state is in control of the city's funds for that additional period of time. So there are a number of different business logistics in that whole process that could create some vulnerabilities for our city.
And then the next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to explore a little more really Govos. Okay. How could we compare prices if we didn't know what the other ancillary needs to go Govos were?
So a couple of things related to that is there were two major functions that the low bid could not provide. And that was first, data conversion and migration of our existing tax history. So all of the businesses who paid in the past, all of their transaction history and data is in our existing system. And it's commonplace, and the recommended vendor, it can migrate all of those payment histories, all of those phone conversations, all of that activity into this new system with Fast Enterprises. GovOS has not done that in the past, doesn't have that capability, and would have to develop that software, that transmission sort of on the fly. So it's not a proven commercial off-the-shelf function. We would want to recommend that the city invest in a proven system that has satisfied customers. I think Fast Enterprises is running a version of this software with nearly 60 clients in different locations across the country. So a very proven system. So that coupled with their system can't integrate with our financial management software, JD Edwards.
Okay,
So
but they said there was a way they could give you a spreadsheet that would.
yes, that would have some manual processes, not a high quality control for data, and a manual process of downloading spreadsheet formatting and then uploading into another system. Nowadays, we're just everybody's used to that kind of seamless integration, and they'd offer to build it at additional cost. But our concern as a selection committee is that without having done that, that's a bit of a high business risk and financial risk for our city.
Okay, does it have an annual fee?
It does. It's $50,000 a year.
So 50,000 versus $500,000.
Right.
Okay, and the upfront charge was what, 400 grand?
I think it was 390, somewhere in there. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Half, $400,000 of your savings is pretty significant after a few years, isn't it?
It is. Again, not having those functions sort of proven and in force is a bit of a risk. We don't know what it would cost for them to build, and we would assume that maintaining those additional functionalities would create an additional annual cost as well. We don't know what that is. So those two business risks were cause for us to eliminate GovOS. And also, they are installed at a couple of other cities. The references led us to believe that they may not be able to have the talent to pull off those additional functionalities as well. So hence we crossed them off. Had some really
And there
good
wasn't any
references.
way that we could keep our old system in place while we found a migration of the data. We could have just let our users look up their histories as needed.
Well, our users don't access the city's existing system. That's not feasible now.
So who uses this history lookup then?
Our staff, a customer, a taxpayer would
We
call
couldn't
in.
then keep it for our staff and they would have access to the histories?
We'd have to maintain that older system and kind of be maintaining two systems, training staff to use two systems and so forth, and kind of running in parallel. And again, additional.
So would it take a whole FTE to do those two functions?
We didn't measure that. We went with the solution that we felt had the greatest probability of success, that is proven at other locations and is currently implemented.
Okay, thank you for those answers. You want me to go more, or do you want to swap off?
Yeah, let Sarah get hers answered.
Okay, thank you. Mine more focused on the water rates, updated option E. I was just trying to understand the numbers a little bit. I was looking at specifically, hold on, actual question here. So there, it looked like there were a couple of different debt injections in years 2025 and 2028, around 47 and 54 million, that were following the 150. And I was just trying to understand what those were. That's one question. And my other question was about the assumption for tap fees going from 6.5 million and then changing to 10 million in 2029.
So Christine Gray, Business Operations Administrator. To your first question, we add debt in where it shows that we need it to maintain those rate increases. So to offset any funding shortfall, we're going to add debt to the extent that we can. So that was the philosophy here, was to keep the 4% in place and then add debt as needed to make sure that we balance through the year 2031.
So it's approximately $100 million more in years cumulatively between 2025 and 2028
Right.
that we're just injecting to stay in the black.
Yep. So we have 3 debt issues, 150 million, then 57 million, then 47 million throughout that 10-year period.
Okay. That's helpful. And then what, so with respect to, we have 5% of our developable land available in the city now, not assuming we wouldn't have some type of redevelopment, but $6.5 million of tap fees annually expected to contribute, and then 10 million happening in 2029 forward. A multifamily project is what, $3 to $4 million for a couple hundred units. So we're anticipating, how did you calculate those assumptions?
So in the way back times, we had $10 million. We made those more conservative for tap fee assumptions to the $6.5 million for water tap fees for our last 10-ish years of assumptions, and then put it back to the $10 million going forward, knowing that we will likely have some more development coming forward. We revisit that every time we update the model. So the next time we go through and do rate setting calculations with this group, we'll look at those again and see what that likelihood is. Looking at historic tap fees, we have actually had a few years where we've met or exceeded $10 million a year. So I have glasses, I should put them on. 2019, we had $10.5 million of tap fees. 2018, we had $9 million. In 2016, we had $16 million. If you go back further to the early teens, they were lower. They were in the $5 to $6 million range, and that was coming out of the economic recession. So that is something we will revisit each time we talk about rates with all of you.
Yeah, and I think that should have some, we should be thinking about that as we think about our comp plan as well. All these things are, Councilor Emmons mentioned this before, just like all these things are connected. So, okay, thank you.
Is that all your questions?
Yes.
Did anybody else have any? I didn't see any, but that doesn't mean I didn't catch some last ones. Councilor Baker?
Well, I've got 3 more, but we've run out of time here.
Well, you've got at least 3 minutes. Be concise.
Okay. I'll skip around to the ones that I think are more important. On 10I, okay? We did not choose the lowest bidder. And then we added on like $200,000 worth of extra work. So was the RFP incomplete?
So two answers. First of all, we picked the best value. We go for the best value, and the low bid in this case had a partnership between 2 firms who've never partnered before on the biggest electrical part of any of our facilities at Big Dry Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. Can't be shut down, and they had the fewest hours. They would probably be a better choice for a much less challenging project, but for this one, not the appropriate choice. We also recognize that along with replacing the switchgear, and this gets to your second part of your question, that it was time to do an arc flash study and something called a protective device coordination evaluation. So what does that mean? So to kind of paint you a picture, an arc flash study is, it protects our equipment and it protects our operations staff. Back when this plant was built, a number of changes have happened. It's due for an arc flash study. What it does is it It evaluates the electrical systems, the major electrical systems, and tags that equipment so that the operators who operate it and the people who repair it have some constraints on how to operate safely. So they don't get electrocuted, so they don't damage the equipment. And arc flash, it can cause an explosion, throw bolts, other materials, cause burns, kill people. And it's also recommended by NEC, OSHA, National Fire Protection Association. So we're well within the means of standard practice. The protective device coordination evaluation is a little different. Let's say your toaster goes bad in your house, okay, and has some electrical mishap and throws a breaker switch. It's wired that way. On major plants, breakers are calibrated. So the electrical engineer gets in there and determines what breaker needs to be flipped with a failure in different parts of the Big Dry Creek Wastewater Treatment Facility campus. We need to have one of those. We don't have one. So if, for example, on one end of the continuum, a unit heater could go out in a way that causes an electrical mishap. If that's not calibrated properly, it might shut the whole plant down. We have 2 staff who handle electrical, and they could be running all over the campus trying to figure out why the entire plant has gone down. On the other end of the continuum, you might have a major piece of equipment that doesn't flip a big enough portion of the electrical system, big enough breaker. It can damage the equipment. This is not equipment we can buy off the shelf. And so those are kind of, or it could hurt or injure someone. So we want to get those things into place so that the treatment facility, we know that it operates reliably and that our operations staff are safe working on it and safe operating it.
Okay, my really question wasn't about the need for it. I mean, even when I remodeled my house, I had to put in arc
30 seconds.
things in addition to that. You've made this a sole source contract, though. Effectively made it a sole source contract. And don't we have bonds where, like, if one of our providers can't fulfill on it, he gets a penalty when we have to choose someone else? Isn't that part of our purchasing? Because like any contractor could really fail on us. Thank you. I'd like to take 8B off the consent agenda.
Somebody
Welcome to tonight's meeting of February 28th, 2022. If you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Counselor Baker.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Present.
Counselor Emmons.
Present.
Counselor Azadi.
Here.
Mayor McNally.
Here.
Counselor Nermella.
Here.
And Counselor Seymour.
Here.
Thank you. That brings us to report of public comments. How many people do we have? Oh, thank you. It's written very small here. Do we have motion for the minutes of February 14th? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the February 14th, 2022 meeting as presented.
Counselor Emmons. Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of February 14th, 2022. Is there any further questions or comments? Counselor Baker? Oh. Roll call, please. Or no, it's a voice vote. Sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to public comment.
We have 7 people signed up to speak this evening. No voicemails and 1 email that was sent to you earlier and attached to the packet. The first speaker we have is Carol Campbell.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor McNally, Mayor Pro Tem Demott, and City Councilors. My name is Carol Campbell, and I'm a 40-year resident of Westminster, residing in Legacy Ridge. Tonight, I want to discuss the proposed water rate changes for the City of Westminster, the reevaluation of site placement and facilities needed for a new water treatment plant, and the proposed increases to the city's water conservation program. Our previous water rates that were in place until January 10th were developed based on a 2019 rate and fee cost service study done by Raftellus. In 2019, Raftellus found that the customers in Westminster were paying 32% less than the city's cost to provide the water. Rate increases were proposed in an 8-year phased approach to manage this cost differential. The previous 110-22 decision that eliminated the Tier 3 would have cost the Westminster taxpayers $750,000 per year. The present proposal, which replaces the 110 decision, would cost the taxpayers $4.1 million just in 2022. And then we would start accruing deficits in our capital improvement funding from 2023 on. Additionally, the city would need to issue bonds for debt of $254 million between now and 2032. The $150 million proposed cost for a new treatment plant might not be enough. I'm unclear why these rate changes cannot wait until the reevaluation of options due in June 2022, which will give us some basis for a final decision on water rates, cost, and location of a new water treatment plant. This especially makes no sense when you consider that Tier 1 users will only save $1.20 a month. Tier 2 users will only save $7.14 a month, and Tier 3 users will only save $21 a month. Of course, these numbers are from the baseline of the 110-22 water rates. So Tier 3 users save even more than this if we look back at 2021 water rates. Collectively, if we didn't change the rates, our money would help keep the city out of serious debt. Individually, these decreased rate changes don't make that much difference on our pocketbook. Based on these numbers, I don't see a good cost-benefit reason for this change. The average family in the United States uses 9,300 gallons a month of potable water, 70% of which is for outside uses. I was struck by the City of Greeley's presentation during the Water Roundtable, which highlighted increased use of raw water for outside watering and other non-potable uses rather than using expensive treated water for uses not requiring it. I know that in previous statements, I have recommended increased use of reclaimed water, but this raw water idea holds some merit too. If we can decrease some of our potable water use, that could help in decreasing the size of our new water treatment plant, as well as extending the lifetime of our present facilities. The reevaluation of potential site locations and facilities needed for a new water treatment plant will cost, excuse me, the taxpayers $1.1 million in 4 months. There are extensive studies, plans, and public processes culminating in the Water 2025 plan. The Semper facility and other sites were evaluated for use and reuse in these previous studies. Between lost revenues, potential need for new construction plans, and increased material costs due to delays in building of a new facility, decisions by the City Council will cost the Westminster taxpayers at least $5.2 million in 2022. The recent fire in Superior and Louisville emphasized that fire is a large threat in our watershed, and we're not able to handle any issue to source water with our existing facility. We would be better off using the $5.2 million to find additional sources of water or finish developing the 2025 plan that went through extensive review by both engineering professionals and the public. I wholeheartedly support an enhanced conservation plan for ratepayers and look forward to seeing it. I understand the city is working on that. I remain concerned that your decisions will affect future property values, increase our costs for a new treatment plant, and harm the health of our citizens and our environment in Westminster. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments.
Thank you. The next speaker is Emily Brooks.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and staff. As you prepare to vote on water rates for 2022 and beyond, I would like to register my strong objection to the proposed reductions in rates. The expansion of Tier 2 to 40,000 gallons and the use of reserve funds to close the gap in revenue that you are intentionally creating by your actions. While I would agree that this plan is not willy-nilly, since you have been so clearly focused on achieving a rate reduction, and I'm aware that staff is supporting the plan and is committed to implement it, I believe it's irresponsible and short-sighted. This is a plan that runs the utility to the edge in 10 years through depletion of reserve funds. I had concerns about whether using the reserve funds to cover a gap in operating revenue is even legal per the city charter requirements for water rates. Apparently, you'll be adjusting the reserve policy to support your use of the reserve funds, but I haven't heard about this in any of your discussions. Maybe you can address this tonight. I also don't believe that you've spent near enough time studying and understanding the financial impacts to the city, and I certainly don't think as a resident I've been provided a solid financial analysis that demonstrates the benefits. And I know you know that I've been following this since before you all were here. Over my career, I've been both a creator of and a decision maker for business cases to deliver customer and business improvements and new technology for telecom infrastructure and business operations projects. In my world, this plan would not have made it past the first review and would require a significant amount of additional supporting financial and risk analysis before I would approve it. I appreciate the recognition that more community outreach is needed in support of water conservation and household and landscape options to reduce usage. It would help if the council as leaders do more to advocate in this area too. Now that you've arrived at a rate plan, maybe you could devote some time and attention to this. I was disappointed that the plan to have a demonstration garden here at City Hall did not get more support, as a project like that could be a visual reminder of what is more in keeping with our climate zone. Maybe you could each talk about the steps you take at home to conserve. I'm happy to share that we began renovating the landscape on our 3rd-acre lot last summer, and we'll be removing more grass this year. Thank you for the opportunity to comment tonight and for your willingness to listen to my concerns.
Thank you. The next speaker is Donna Werkheiser. Welcome.
So I have some questions, but I know you can't answer them. Westminster Code of Ordinances, 846, specific nuisance declared. So the condemned house that blew up was a condemned house. Why was it allowed to be there condemned if it was a nuisance? So I'm just wondering what code enforcers do as far as a condemned house. Because now we got several houses that are destroyed, several well, you all know about the house that blew up. So I complained about the dirt at the come and go that washed away. They saw some graffiti there. Well, the graffiti's gone, but I'm wondering, how is the tunnel vision in South Westminster to miss all the other graffiti around that area? The junk cars, the trash cars, the cars that have been sitting on the street for 3 years, the cars that are up backwards. I mean, it's like we're the forgotten area. I just wondered what the code enforcers do. I mean, I'm glad that graffiti, I never even noticed it, at the come and go is gone. But what about the rest of the graffiti? And the junk cars that are in the street? I mean, there's several people, we have a lot of cars at our houses. And there's just cars that, they've been expired for 3 years and they're still sitting on the street. Nothing's ever being done. I know that there's a couple gentlemen here that have apartment buildings that have complained about how much the city picks on them, about this and that. And, but then you got a condemned house that's been there and blew up. Another one of my things is they removed the trash can at the dog park, the Westminster dog park. I know it's like, why would they remove a trash can at the dog park? People are using it. So I talked to one of the girls at Parks and she said that they recycle the poop. So they have certain trash cans. They come every 2 weeks to remove that and they recycle it. But now they removed the trash can that you put your other trash in. So where are people going to put the trash? They're going to put them in the poop things. But they removed the ones right next to the gates where instead of just putting a poop trash can and a trash can, they just put a poop, they just took them all away. And they put all the other trash cans or dog poop in a row on the side. So where are people going to throw their trash now? You actually got people picking up their trash and putting it away. And now they take the trash can away. So, and I've asked, why don't they put trash cans further into the park? There's roads, because you always have poo bags along the road, it's like at least people picking them up, putting them in the trash bags. But I was told, well, the workers forget to empty them. I know that we're short-staffed everywhere, but I'm just wondering, why would you take a trash can that people are using away? I guess that's it. Well, thank you.
Thank you. And City Manager Andrews, those questions will be followed up on. Thanks.
The next speaker is Linda Graybell.
As town crier tonight or just a calm?
I'm Linda Graybeal. I live in the Trendwood subdivision. We've been there for 24 years now. And I'm coming to speak on behalf of the Westminster Historical Society in a positive affirmation of the Briggs Greenhouse Center, the Fred Valenti Humanitarian Park, and the Vicki Bunsen Sculpture Garden. Concerning the Briggs Greenhouse Center, last time I was with Bob Briggs was at the Greenhouse Center when it opened. And so that'll be fond memories for me. As you know, one of my side hobbies is gardening. And so this is going to be really, really neat. And when we had the Westminster Garden Tour back in 2015, the Briggs were on that garden tour. So I'm so excited about that. And then the Fred Valenti Humanitarian Park. Of course, a very complete dossier by
Dino.
How could I forget his name? Oh my goodness. And I especially
unforgettable
like the
person.
paragraphs about Fred being a volunteer fireman and about his humanitarian acts. And I never got to meet Fred. I wish I had. But I would say, from knowing the son and the grandson, that Fred must have been one gutsy and compassionate man. He got his gutsiness from, or it passed on down to Dino, and the compassion passed on down to Larry. But I was thinking, that is some of the adjectives we could describe our city as. We're both gutsy and compassionate. We're very community minded, but we're gutsy. We're right out there. So I'm all in favor of that. Then Vicki Bunsen, she took me under her wing when she saw how much I was passionate about Westminster history. And 3 things that did not make the little commentary about her you need to know. She was very proud of 2 things that she did for the city. The first one was the 1850 Conklin House in the midst of Green Knolls subdivision. She said, Linda, we can have the very old in a modern subdivision. And by the way, the 1850 house is the oldest surviving house in Westminster that the Westminster Historical Society did a historic preservation award a few years ago, BC, that's before COVID. And then the other thing she was very proud of was pushing through the overpass at 92nd and the railroad tracks. She said, we have to find a way to connect Westminster to the new western part of Westminster. And we're not going to have that debacle that we have currently at 88th and the railroad tracks. I don't know if you've ever been there where the train comes through. Well, you're there and there and there. It's a long thing. So that was another thing. But the other thing I remember Vicki by so much is her basic philosophy. She said historic items and sites need to be used so their importance can be enjoyed and remembered by all. So I I'm just so thankful for you bringing this to the forefront and naming these 3 sites that we will enjoy as long as we're alive. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Craig Russell. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor, Pro Tem, Council. You're probably tired of seeing my face up here complaining about the systematic rental inspection program that we have. I'd like to let you know that we had a little bit of progress on that. We were able to talk to staff a little bit, and they came back with the comments that they're completely 100% correct and that everyone else is wrong. They said that they were completely correct, that screens need to be on all the doors and that sliding doors need to have screens, but opening doors don't. That because bugs don't come through opening doors because people don't leave those open, but they'll leave sliding doors open for ventilation. I don't know where they came up with these facts because they're certainly not facts, they're opinions on that. They also came up saying that it was very confusing. I was trying to get answers on exactly how much yard needs to be landscaped. It was 30%, but it was 50% if it touches a sidewalk and a minimum of 1,000 yards or something like that. So they never really answered it. And again, they came back that you can't have dirt. Dirt is not a landscape option. And apparently, which I didn't know either, that neither is, you're not allowed to have artificial turf in Westminster if you're in a rental. That's against the law as well. So we thought maybe putting that in might help to ease some of the water problems that we have, but that's illegal too. So I was very, very disappointed in staff diminishing that my opinion is not important, that they're correct on everything that they've done, and that they're for you on that as well. So I guess we'll continue the fight on that because I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. I also quite honestly think it's discriminatory. Here we are having all these laws if you're a renter, but these laws don't apply if you're an owner. So if you own property in Westminster, you own a home, which I'm sure a lot of us in here do, you don't have to abide by these rules. But if you're a renter, you do. If you're a homeowner, we don't have the city code inspectors coming into your house and pointing out that your smoke detector needs a battery or that there might be some grease above the stove or that you have a hole in your screen or you don't have a screen. As a homeowner, you don't have that. You don't have that invasion. But as a renter, you do.
I wonder if this was on every single home, because, I mean, quite frankly, if this is such a program and we're saving so many lives, why wouldn't we do it for everybody? Why wouldn't every home, every place that someone's in, have to abide by this same thing? So, I also wanted to make a comment too on the cars and graffiti. I called in several cars. I called in an RV. I called in a boat. About 3 months to get them off the street after they've been ticketed 2 or 3 times. And by the way, if you want to call it in, you have to call go down the block and get the 6 cars that are on there. They only get the one you call in. So I didn't know I really had to do their work for them. I thought that if I said there's several cars on this block, that they would actually take the time to look at them all, as opposed to what's the one license plate you can give us. So that's something I think that we could probably do a way better job on. I'll let you go. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tim Pegg. Welcome.
Hi, Council. Tonight I'm asking you to vote no on Councilor's Bill 13. I think it is incompatible with any responsible perspective on water rates. And to quote a previous speaker, it is not gutsy and it's a poor attempt at compassion. By Council's own admission in tonight's meeting agenda, the proposed water rates would result in ongoing annual budget shortfalls in 10 years' time. The current plans for the new water treatment plant are paused, and a revision might reduce the financial strain of this decision. But this council has not so far come up with that plan revision despite years of opportunity to do so. That may one day be the case, but at this stage it is purely a fantasy. So from even that optimistic perspective, these are not the right water rates for 2022. Further, the proposed rates include the use of some mix of money from federal grants in the city's general fund, but it's not clear what that mix is. Unless it is entirely composed of federal grant money, this means that the water utility will be subsidized through property and sales taxes. It does not make sense that I should pay for anyone else's water use through other taxes. Conversely, no one else should have to pay for my water use. I've heard the idea that this might reflect an ideological commitment by some on council to privatizing nearly all government functions by setting up a future funding crisis. Whether that is the plan, I don't know. Privatizing the water utility isn't my favorite idea, but let's think about it. Neglecting the water utility before selling it off is a poor plan. It would be better to sell it sooner rather than later and get a better sale price, not to mention the fact that interest rates mean that money now is better than the same amount of money later. Let's return to the fact that this analysis shows the water utility losing money over the next decade. I don't understand how this is compatible with Charter Section 14.6, which says that the utility rates shall be so fixed to at least meet all the operating costs of such utility. Whether or not it complies with the letter of the charter, it certainly violates the intent of the charter and the principle of good stewardship. Please vote no on Councilor's Bill 13. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Scott Ireland. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. My name is Scott Ireland. I live in the Lexington subdivision, which is just north of 136th and off of Huron. I've lived in Westminster for about 36 years, 22 of which have been in the home that I live in today. This is only the second time that I've spoken to the City Council in a setting like this. The first time was 4 years ago, when I voiced my concerns with the increase that I knew would be crippling to me and my neighbors, and to most Westminster homeowners. Today, council, as well as some on city staff who ignored my pleas and that of many other residents, are no longer here. Those incumbents who failed to listen have been voted out, and this new city council has now a clear mandate from the voters to put an end to crazy high water rates. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to the efforts that are being made by city staff and city council to do just that. I'd especially like to single out Bruce Baker and Rich Seymour's efforts. Their proposed rate structure would provide the kind of relief needed and would bring Westminster rates more in line with that of surrounding cities. while still providing adequate funding for necessary capital improvements. Now, I realize the latter is something that is still being explored and debated, but it's been my experience that things that must get done almost always do, and that whatever amount of money is made available, those in government always seem to find a way to spend it, even when it's not always essential. This latest modified option E staff proposal in some depth prior to this evening's meeting. But if those details were shared on the city's website, I was unable to find them. In fact, only this afternoon did I learn that it wasn't just the addition of a tier 3 rate that made option E different than the Baker Seymour proposal, but that the tier 2 rate now being considered is higher as well. As you'll note in the handout that I provided each of you, which shows how this new modified rate structure would impact water bills based on consumption, comparing that to 2020 rates for Westminster and to that of surrounding cities. The new modified option E rate structure may get rid of crazy, but it doesn't get rid of high. Surrounding cities have probably have passed some rate increases in the last year or two that may paint a slightly different picture than the one in the graph that I shared. But the fact remains, even with the modified option E rate structure, Westminster still probably has the highest overall average water rates of any surrounding city. As a 5,000 gallon average winter consumption user, which I think is pretty typical for many families, I have to pay over $70 each month, even before using a single drop of water. And then if I take care of the landscaping on my half-acre lot, at least to the degree that it's required to keep it looking healthy, I'm still probably paying close to $400 per month during summer with this new option E modified proposal that you're considering. Therefore, I strongly urge you to reconsider the Baker Seymour proposal. Having said that, whatever you do decide here to do tonight, I hope that you will not stop looking for ways to provide water rate relief to Westminster residents. The approach that I believe is the most fair and the least discriminating, as it takes into account actual need, is the one used by Thornton. I've shared that with you as well. The Thornton approach allows lot size to be factored in order to determine a user's water allocation. Now, I've heard some from City Council suggest that approach would undermine conservation efforts. But in fact, just the opposite is true. Instead of only incentivizing large lot owners to conserve, which is what happens in a punitive tiered rate structure that we've been under, everyone is equally motivated to use water wisely. I hope you will consider seriously the Thornton approach as you move forward, and I hope that's something like that can be adopted in the next cycle. I and many other residents will continue to be watching. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our final speaker. And did we have any phone calls in? We have no voicemails this evening. Thanks. Thank you to everybody that came tonight. That brings us to City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Councilors. As some of our speakers have noted, tonight is a very special night with the recognition of 3 very important community members in naming ceremonies that will ensure that future generations of Westminster residents will understand and celebrate the contributions these individuals have made to our community. We have something planned a little later in the agenda, but please allow me to welcome the family and friends of the Valente family. Son Dino, I recognize behind the mask. Vicky Bunson's family and friends, and the Briggs family and friends. I and the entire staff at the City of Westminster would like to thank them for joining us tonight and allowing us to share in this remarkable opportunity to recognize their loved ones and the immeasurable contributions they've made to our community. Next, I would draw attention, as some of our speakers have as well, to agenda item 10C, which is Councilor's Bill number 13, which, if adopted by City Council, would lower the water bill of every Westminster resident starting June 1st of this year. It sets out reductions to the Tier 1 and Tier 2 water rates, retains the reduced Tier 3 rate, and increases the allowable consumption under Tiers 1 and 2. This effort was driven by City Council, supported by staff and reviewed extensively in study sessions through modeling work that balances affordable water rates with a sustainable annual capital reinvestment program and a belt-tightened budget for a replacement water treatment facility. The rate scenario under consideration tonight will enable the city to provide safe, reliable, and affordable water to our residents while supporting an enhanced conservation program based on information, education, and support. I would also draw attention to the information-only staff report that provides an overview tonight of our upcoming business survey. The survey kicks off March 14th, will run for 3 weeks, and will be sent to all licensed businesses in Westminster. We encourage all our businesses to participate to provide us with important insight into what's important to them. We anticipate reporting back on the results in public meeting of City Council at the end of the second quarter of this year. And finally, I would note that agenda items are to collectively bargain should they wish. And with that, Mayor, I conclude my manager's report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to City Council comments. Anyone? Councilor Izadi?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the residents who spoke tonight. I just wanted to give my gratitude to a few businesses out in the city. So this week I met with the owner of Tattered Cover, so the new Tattered Cover downtown. It's a great store. I encourage everyone to go visit. He spoke about the struggles that they went through the pandemic and how bookstores everywhere are struggling, and the changes that he had to make to survive. So it's a really inspirational story. The store's mission is to become a community organization. So he really wants to involve Westminster residents, different events, concerts, music. They have a bar in there. So it's just a great store. I also visited the Medusa Collective opening night. So I know some of my colleagues were there as well. And that was fantastic. There was a couple hundred people there, I think, by the end of the night. The parking lots were packed through several blocks down late in the night. And I think that's going to be a really fantastic area for the community to gather, for artists to create. There's energy there, and I really appreciate the enhancement of arts and crafts and the elevation of that of these voices. So I encourage everyone to visit there too, especially if you're an artist. They are looking to connect with the artists of Westminster. So anyone who's interested, please contact me. I could give you their numbers and you can go visit. I also had a few my in-council office hours. So several residents last week. That was great. I appreciate meeting and talking with you because I want to understand what your needs are, and how I can help connect you with resources or just listen, so you can vent to me if you want to, and just tell me what your issues are, and I'm here to help. So just want to thank everyone for doing that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sad note on Friday, a hit to the Stanley Lake family. Councilor Emmons and Mayor Pro Tem DeMott are both graduates of Stanley Lake, and 3 of our kids graduated from then, but there was a tragic loss of life in an auto accident that took some of the kids from their families and their friends. And so I wanted to recognize that our hearts go out to Stanley Lake. There's been other tragedies. You hate to hear the term Gator Strong have to come up again, but they will be Gator Strong. And so thoughts, prayers for their families.
Councilor Baker.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Okay, tonight is a wonderful night because we're going to do something about the water rates. It's a step forward, a second step forward. I had hoped it to be a bigger step. But considering that 3 very courageous people on this council have been all but assaulted by fears and false information and had horrible accusations made against them of not maintaining our infrastructure, I think it's very courageous on their part to look at the real facts in the case and move ahead with this. Tonight, I couldn't help about Bob Briggs tonight because Bob Briggs was always the memory of this council. So tonight, sort of echoing Bob Briggs, I brought in an article from the Journal Sentinel from December of 1975. And in 1975, the voters of this city increased the sales tax from 2% to 3%, with over 0.5% of that extra penny going to the water enterprise. If we still had that sharing formula in place today, it would provide $12 million a year, roughly, of taxpayer money to the water enterprise. It's not there, that money someplace else. The water enterprise supports itself. It can support itself. It will support itself. In option B on our 5-option plan we considered, by having a more thrifty approach to the capital investment and reinvestment program, we would be in the black for as far as we can see into the future. We have done some squandering with ratepayer money, not taxpayer money, ratepayer money, on projects that were unneeded, ill-advised, and foolish. I mean, the entire meter replacement being one of them, and the $23 million biosolids plant being the other one. So tonight, we should celebrate the second step in turning what has been the lost part of this conversation, how our city looks, to restore some of the beauty back to our city. Trees do not grow in Colorado except in the river valleys. And yet we proclaim we're a tree city because we are, and a lawn city. And we do that because of the gift that previous councils made in their foresight of how to use water to benefit the people who live here. It's a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, everyone who has showed up tonight to join us. It's nice to continue to see this room fill up for far too many months and over a year. We were hiding in our garages or at home in our office. And I don't say that because it wasn't serious, but it's nice to see people's faces again. Thank you, Councilor Seymour, for mentioning Stanley Lake. I would ask you to also keep the people who are still in the hospital in your prayers. That's a rough situation for our community. I wanted to mention, I did visit the new art gallery opening. Fantastic place. Lots of different kind of art. I like to see the fact that there's some modern art starting to mold with what I consider a great art district that we already have in historic Westminster. And so it was good to see some different things such as tattoo artists. And those of you who know me, I have a fair amount of those. So it was nice to see that, and some of my own folks call it. But their website is themedusacollection.com. And they have a lot of shows coming up that they shared with us. So that's somewhere where you could go and see some of the different shows and be able to participate and see what kind of good artists are coming out and support them. Lastly, I just want to say thank you again for everybody who's being part of the water conversation. I am the only council member up here still who was here for that 2018 vote. Coincidentally, I'm the only one who voted against it. And all I've ever wanted is a discussion that has all the sides that we've heard about and trying to come up with the best solution. I know this council is very working hard. You'll probably hear more about it when we vote on it later. But we are now having that conversation that I've begged for the last 4 years. So for that, I thank staff, I thank this council, and I thank the community for continuing to be part of that conversation.
I just wanted to report that I have had 2 lunches with the Jeffco mayors and with the Northwest group of mayors, and both groups tell me water rates from their cities are going up because they haven't done anything for 2 years. So we'll stay tuned, and I've shared that with Manager Andrews, and he will start watching as decisions are made to see where we are in still that mix. There was something else, but it went straight out my mind, so it's not needed. That brings us to consent agenda, and we have been asked to pull off item B. So do we have a motion on A? Councilor Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve consent agenda item 8A.
Councilor Seymour?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass consent agenda A. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott,
Yes.
Counselor Emmons,
Yes.
Counselor Azadi,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Counselor Nermella,
Yes.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt consent agenda item 8B.
Councilor Seymour?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Counselor B. Vote, consent agenda B. Counselor Baker, did you want to say anything?
Yes, I do. I'm going to be voting against this proposal. I do not think it was properly thought through with all the alternatives considered. I think there are real alternatives that could save us money. The first thing I want to point out is we had staff back in 1986 write our own program, which we have used for the last, what would that be, 36 years? And we've not had to pay a fee each year to use it. We had to maintain it. We had to do the maintenance on it. We had to write other facts to it, but we did it ourselves in-house with our staff, a capable, competent staff. There are options that we can pursue, having the state do this mission. Don't know what it would cost. Was never asked about. There was the low bidder by significant money when it comes to the yearly license fee. Nearly $500,000 license fee versus a $50,000 license. Without exploring that further, I think that's a foolish waste of money. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilor Baker, for your comments. I certainly share your passion to spend less of the taxpayers' money wherever we can. However, this being what I do for a day job as far as IT work, if I look at this proposal, I see there are things that have changed throughout the last 3 decades as far as how people do software, and specifically groups like government or anything that has compliances that they have to meet. So this has gotten to be more expensive to write your own software. I can tell you in my day job, if the question is, should we develop it versus buy it off the shelf? If I could buy it off the shelf and customize it, that's typically the cheaper route. So reading through this specific one, I'm comfortable with what is being passed. I do appreciate Councilor Baker, again, always trying to find ways that we can save the taxpayer dollars, but I think that this makes sense to me.
Councilor Emmons.
Thank you. I just have a quick question as far as the timing of this. Does this have to pass tonight, or can it pass, let's say, in the next study or the next council meeting? My question is that I'm curious as to how much yearly we spend internally focusing on trying to bridge gaps and on an FTE or on those missing Band-Aids that we're moving to progress to this. I know it might be at I hate to say it, discounted cost, but at a discounted cost as internally versus this technology. But I appreciate what Councilor Baker is saying, but also understand what Mayor Pro Tem is saying. It just would be, and if there's a timeline to it, I'm okay and comfortable with voting on it tonight. But if there's more information that we could provide as far as maybe that missing piece, that might be helpful. So.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll ask Mr. Larry Dorr to speak to that question. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. Thank you, Councilor Emmons. Larry Dorr, Chief Financial Officer. our software engineer team tells me that between staff time and outside consultants, we spend between $200,000 and $250,000 a year in direct and indirect costs to maintain the existing system, maintain our training and expertise to keep the existing system viable and functioning in service to our business community and our staff for collections and auditing purposes. So that, of course, varies from year to year, but that's a rough estimate from the recent past.
Very much. And that's helpful to understand that the cost difference to this, just on the cuff of it, is about $200,000. So thank you for that. It's not the 500,000 that the $500,000 that we thought. It's more of a closer gap of more 200,000. So I am comfortable about making this vote tonight. So thank you.
Seeing no one else, roll call, please. Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Councilor Emmons.
Yes.
Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councilor Nurmela.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
And Councilor Baker.
Oh.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to public hearings and other new business, and I am going to ask for privilege to do the first two and read the motions. After we vote on the two pieces under A, then we will invite one at a time, first the Valente family up, and then when we're finished shish kebabbing you, then we'll invite the Bunsen family up. After that, then we'll come back and pass the next one and go through the same process. So with item 8, or A1, 10A1, I move to authorize the formal naming of the Rodeo Market Park to the Fred Valente Humanitarian Park. Councilor Seymour?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass 10A1. Is there any further discussion? And I remember what I was going to say to Chip. Your dad, always, we had the distinct discussion between soil and dirt. As I work in my garden, I think of him every time. Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to, thank everybody who showed up for this, but I want to give a special note to the mayor and Councilor Seymour. They both have been working on this to recognize these folks for a very long time. And I know that because before the mayor was back up here, I was up here hearing from the mayor about getting this done. So I'm happy that she continued on, and thank you, City Manager Andrews, for making these possible.
Well, and it wasn't me. We have a whole crew back there of Historical Society members. I was just had the pen in hand. So, and it just happens that I'd be sitting here now. But anyway, roll call, please.
Councilor Emmons.
Yes.
Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councilor Nurmela.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Baker.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
I now move to authorize the formal naming of the sculpture display area of Rodeo Market Park to the Vicki Bunsen Sculpture Garden.
Second.
Thank you. Is there anything further? Roll call, please.
Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councilor Nurmela.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
And Councilor Emmons.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
With the Valente family, John Carpenter, Marty McCullough, and Linda Graybill representing Linda, the Historical Society, and the two young gentlemen, John and Marty, they contacted me just as I was penning the park, and they gave what they wanted to do with for Vicki Bunsen. So we talked. I shared everything that we had tried, and we're going to try a second time. And we decided this was a great fit. And so if you all will meet me down front, and Dino, I have a mask. I'm happy to wear it. And you will spread out however you feel comfortable, but this is your moment, so please come down. Who isn't coming? Okay. Dino, am I okay without a mask? All right. Mr. Valente, would you introduce everybody that's here? Did he bring cannolis tonight? And this is Marty McCullough, John Carpenter, and Mr. Seymour. So this really, when I sent this in, we didn't expect this to be seen, but here it is. Fred Valente was born in North Denver in 1912. He married Irene Heder in 36. Actually, they married 3 times, but there's a lot more to that story. So Linda, I think there is a story, and the Historical Society needs to do a play. He was working in the garden farm dairy, driving a milk truck, and she worked in the office. They adopted their first daughter, is it Tonette? Around 1938. Larry was born in 1943. They adopted their second daughter, Monetta, okay, around late 1948. In the 1940s, he owned a small grocery store around 48th and Beach Court, but it was taken for the build of I-70. He loved the rodeo and ranching, and they moved to the country in 1943. Oh, 46, thank you. This was Dino's notes, so, you know. To the house at 78th and Bradburn that my dad still owns. This is written by Dino. The house had a large amount of land that went south to 77th and west to Raleigh. In 53, he opened the rodeo supermarket on 73rd in a building he bought at some point from Roy D. Barnes. This was the city's first supermarket. He obtained the city's first 3-2 liquor license. Funny story, Reverend Lester Nicholas of then the Westminster United Presbyterian Church did in fact speak against the license on behalf of the church. And then he was the first customer. He served as a volunteer firefighter from 48 to 90 or 72, but that would have needs to be verified, he says. When the alarm went off, no matter what he was doing, he pulled off his apron and bolted out the door. And he always wanted to drive because he got an extra $2. He may have responded to the fire that took Carl Hawkinson's life in the red and white store next door. He brought on the other young bucks, such as Johnny Lippert, who was a young immigrant and who helped him get his job with the city utility department that he held lifelong. Johnny was Kathy Pascoe's dad. In 1953, they sold off the majority of the ranch for what became the Valente subdivision, which was Westminster's first modern day GI tract subdivision. The builder was, thank you, who is the family of Brian, who was the rescuer of the Pleasant Hill school bus tragedy. The school bus of children outside of Lamar got caught in a blizzard and 5 died along with the driver. The abstract is sitting next to my desk at the store. We were starting to work on it when the universe shut down last year, and Linda Graybill did get to view it and discuss it with Dad. He was a charter member, number 6, he believes, of the BPOE Elks Lodge 2227, as well as a member of everything else. He and my grandmother were donors to help to build Holy Trinity Catholic Church to move out of the Quonset hut. He was known for his quiet good needs, never wanting recognition. And that was emphasized to me over and over as we wrote this. Some of the stories include Joanne Cunningham, Joanne Price as we know her, Her dad was hospitalized with cancer, and his grandfather got up early every morning and went to the Cunningham store, and he would cut the day's meat and set the case for him before then going to his own store. His rationale was the man was sick and he should not lose his business because of it. We have stumbled across a newspaper story where he raised money, essentially going door to door for a family who lost everything in an apartment fire. When customers need food, he would not give it to them, but instead reached into his pocket and gave them the cash to shop and told them to pay him back when they could. He secured the first milk contract for District 50. He teamed up with Ed Tepper and had Ed produce the milk, and then every morning he would go pick up at Schoenberg Dairy and run the route. He was bold and an adventurous businessman. In fact, the larger stores moved into the area and he continued to put them out of business. At one point in the 60s, he got very upset with how one of the bigger stores was engaging in not so good practices that he leveraged his relationship with Tepper and started a milk war. No easy feat in the post-Depression era. After 2 weeks, the store manager came to him, I think with a white flag, and said, Fred, I give. I'll set the prices back where they belong. Please stop. He did, but just a little bit later to teach him a lesson. Repeatedly, he tried to buy the site on 72nd from Gilbean after having put every store in the location out of business. One day in 1970, Gil came to my grandfather and said, Fred, I'm ready to sell. Call your attorney. My grandfather's father said, nope. Larry, go get a piece of butcher paper, and made Gil sit down at a cart and at a, what says cart? Oh, okay. That makes sense now. And hammer out all the details on that paper and then sign it, and then said, now you can take this to your attorney. Yep, he bought a shopping center with a piece of butcher paper. Not for the public part was him turning to my dad before telling him to get the butcher paper and saying, oh, I don't know if I can say this part. Oh, I'm not letting that SOB get away from him, from me again. They moved the store in June 1970, including one Sunday where the help of Serrano boys, Ken and Westy volunteer firemen, they rolled safe down the street. He loved fishing, and my grandparents had a home at Carter Lake where they would go and stay and fish. In fact, we still have that home, and I have all the antique fishing lures. After a multi-year battle with prostate cancer, he passed in 72. In those days, that cancer had a 97% fatality rate compared to today's 97% survival rate. For his funeral procession, Chief Town posted officers on all four corners of every intersection on Bradburn. Quite an honor and tribute. He also took care of his family, 3 parcels left out of the subdivision. One immediately west of the Bradburn house went to his older brother, half-brother Tony, who built it for his family. 2 on Raleigh went to his two sisters, Vi and Helen. And Uncle Tony built the homes for them. As a grocer, he was active with Associated Grocers, who was a grocery buying co-op, who won many awards over the years. As a general rule, he didn't sponsor teams because he couldn't do it for all. To give you an idea how times were different, one time Reverend Dallenbach came into the grocery store and my grandfather said, Reverend, how much do you want? The only time you come in is when you want something. They laughed, and when my grandfather donated to whatever cause it was. After his death, the Westminster Chamber of Commerce created the Fred Valente Humanitarian Award to honor those whose service in the community was a betterment of the community through humanitarian deeds. And that was critical when we were writing this. And when the Parks and Rec people called me, I said a couple of times humanitarian wasn't in there, and I said, his name is less important than the humanitarian park. Trust me, we have to have the humanitarian park. So we got it. I believe that 2 of the drivers of it were Will Flockman and Bob Briggs. He helped so many people find jobs and careers in the grocery industry, as well as several find their way to sobriety. One point I did miss. My grandfather ran for the school board around 1959. He was going to clean up a mess that was happening. His backers included Ann Groff, who's now Ann Briggsdale, but he lost to the entrenched Garland T. Sims. 50 years later, a new chapter was written, and his grandson won. What a wonderful family. Thank you, John and Marty, for helping get this all done tonight. And this is the first piece of the park. And you want to say anything? I heard that when you sort of heard about this, you said it's about time. It's done. Congratulations. So thank you again.
If I could have the representatives of the Bunsen family and friends come up, please.
I'm Lori Brandt. I worked for the city for many years. Worked with Vicki Benson in the Community Development Department doing historic preservation and public art. And we worked on the rodeo market and Schoenberg Farm and Semper Farm and a lot of the other properties that were dedicated and grants received to restore the properties. Vicki was instrumental to the historic preservation program in our city, and I'm so proud that this is finally showing some recognition for her in our community. This here is Hannah. This is Vicki's daughter. And we have, of course, Marty McCullough, Linda Grable, John Carpenter, and I'm sorry, Malcolm Murray, of course. I know your name. I just didn't know you. Obviously, all of them have worked with Vicki over the years at the city and also in many of her efforts to preserve properties here in the Westminster community. So I'm very proud to be here today and recognize Vicki in this way.
Thank you. John, Marty?
We just wanted to thank you all so much for recognizing all of the hard work that everyone has given, and we just thank you so much.
He had another daughter, Morgan, who's in California, so she could not make it with her and her family. And I just want to say real quick, Mayor, thank you for, and I didn't know Rich was tagging along and being your co-supporter there, but Mayor, I know we worked together to get this done, and I so much appreciate your effort. I left the city in 2015. It was one of my retirement goals to get this done. And beyond words to say how much I appreciate it. The last thing I wanted to leave with you is something that wasn't said that Vicki shared with me several times that a city who fails to honor its history has no soul. And I thought that really spoke deeply to her commitment to the work. And so with that.
What Marty didn't say is she worked for the city attorney's office for many years, and I stole her away to come to work in the community development department because Vicki had a passion for community development and especially public art and history. And she just expressed that in every aspect of her work. And she cared deeply for Westminster, even though she lived in the city of Denver. She was a proud supporter and participant in the Grange activities. I mean, it was just inspirational to see how much she cared about Westminster in every aspect of her work life and her personal life. And people like that are not a dime a dozen, I'll tell you. And it's so wonderful that the city council has chosen to recognize Vicki in this way. So thank you so much.
Just very briefly, I knew Vicki long before I started working for Westminster on Denver community affairs, but worked with her for many years with the city of Westminster. And I know how genuinely dedicated she was to the city. It really meant a lot to her. Its history, the integrity, and the honor that she took in representing the city was extraordinary. I'm really proud of her.
I'm going to say one last thing. She was a spark. And I just would ask that we try and keep this spark going, that this commitment that she created to historic preservation for the city goes on and on for multiple generations so that her legacy does not end with this first event.
Thank you, Marty and all. I had a after the fact connection to Vicki because one of the first tours I got of 72nd Avenue, a gentleman I now counts as a good friend, he says, "Let me take you around. By the way, do you know who Vicki Bunsen was? No, let me take you in to the Grange and show you her plaque." And then 2 hours later, we completed that quick tour. And then I was honored to be appointed as a trustee to the Westminster Historical Society. And one of the first few meetings was, let us tell you about Vicki. And so that was a connection for me. But a little bit more on Vicki. She worked tirelessly for more than 25 years on the City of Westminster staff and was its staunchest advocate for the historic preservation. Vicki's career began in the city attorney's office and later moved to city community. Now we know it was a theft. To devote herself full-time to advancing the cause of historic preservation in our city. Vicki was responsible for establishing the city's first urban renewal area, an urban renewal project with the redevelopment of the Westminster Plaza Shopping Center at 72nd and Federal. This project served as a catalyst for significant redevelopment of historic Westminster and a much broader commitment to historic preservation of the very roots of the city, including the Rodeo Supermarket, the Grange, and the Red and White Building. Vicki successfully advocated for much-needed infrastructure improvements to 72nd Avenue, Bradburn Avenue, including street lighting, street and sidewalk and landscaping improvements. Art, music, and historic preservation were Vicki's greatest passions. Vicki played a key role in the formation of the South Westminster Arts Group and Historic Westminster Art District. She could often be seen at the Westminster Grange playing her beloved fiddle with her old bluegrass band. The ongoing art and sculpture shows and historic Westminster festivals are a direct product of Vicki's efforts. Vicki's efforts were not limited to the original Westminster area. Vicki went on to assure the preservation of the Schoenberg Farm and Dairy, the Semper Family Farm, and the Mushroom Farm Water Tower, and the Wesley Chapel Pioneer Cemetery. It can be well said of Vicki that she was the city's mother of historic preservation. Without her devotion, passion, and commitment to historic preservation, much of the city's historic roots would be lost. Dedicating the Vicki Bunsen Memorial Sculpture Garden and the Fred Valenti Humanitarian Park will serve as important and permanent reminders to the citizens of Westminster of the roots of which our great city grew. So with that, I present to her daughter a plaque of appreciation Thank you for sharing her with us.
That brings us to item B. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize the renaming of the England Park Greenhouse Center to the Briggs Greenhouse Center.
Counselor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 10B. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Counselor Nermella,
Yes.
Counselor Seymour,
Yes.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott,
Yes.
Counselor Emmons,
Yes.
and Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
And with the Briggs family, come on down. And I think we want Mr. Wallensack. Yep, he's here.
It's too cold to be playing golf.
So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and introduce yourselves real fast.
I'm Chip, chocolate chip change chip. And I still remember getting dirt under my fingernails and plants growing soil and did not understand that as a teenager. But I actually worked on the eulogy for my dad. I actually got to understand soil has the right condition, that the dirt plus love, water, seeds, light, all of it to grow together in community. And we all need that to grow each other to, in a loving community, to love one another well. That soil that was one of my husband's favorite things to take himself. And he would introduce various things with that. And he did a heck of a lot around here.
Actually, I'm going to skip on you. This letter here from it would be weird for me to read a letter from somebody standing like here. So, I'm Bill Wallensack, and I knew Bob Briggs over 30 years. And one thing about Bob, didn't matter who you were, he would greet you with a smile and a handshake every time. And he was such a community giver. He was an advocate for the environment and parks and open space, started his own greenhouse business with his family. And there's all kinds of stories I could go with Bob, but I'll just turn this back.
So what brings us here tonight is to honor Bob. And so a couple of months back when I found out that Bob had passed, I had a multitude of phone calls from county commissioners to former electeds to just friends who let me know that he had passed, which was hard for us all to hear. And it was one of those no way moments because Bob was kind of Mr. Westminster to a lot of us. For me, Bob was one of the very first people who sat down with me when I said I want to do this whole council thing. I know that Counselor Emmons had the same experience. I know that Counselor Seymour also did his fair share of sitting and having coffee with Bob. And we all wanted to find a way to recognize him. And Bill reached out to me, and this was actually his idea. There were a couple other ideas floated to me, but this is the one that made a lot of sense. So if you don't mind, I would like you to read the letter that you send to council because it really speaks to life.
Thank you. I wrote to Mayor McNally, Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, and members of City Council. And I wrote, I'd like to propose that Mayor McNally and City Councilors consider the greenhouse be named after Bob Briggs or Bob and Shirley Briggs. You're his partner. You probably were a lot behind all the stuff that he did. Bob was a third generation Westminster resident and graduated from Westminster High School. Bob then graduated from Colorado State University with a master's degree in horticulture and has been a passionate advocate for improving the environment through careful plant selection. This has ultimately improved the quality of life for Colorado residents. Bob's wife Shirley shared in his passion for horticulture and was Bob's partner in founding the Briggs Greenhouse. Bob's community service is unmatched. Bob served on the Urban and Drainage Flood Control District, the State Agricultural Commission, and many years on Westminster's Open Space Advisory Board. Bob was an Adams County Commissioner, served on the RTD Board of Directors, the Colorado House of Representatives, and the Westminster City Council. On top of all that, Bob was a founding member of the Westminster 1710 Rotary Club and served on the Butterfly Pavilion Board of Directors. Bob dedicated many hours of his time serving the Westminster community and making our community a better place for us all. These are a small part of Bob's contribution to our city as well as the state of Colorado. Naming the city's greenhouse after Bob or Bob and Shirley would be a proper tribute to the Briggs family legacy to our community. I'd like to thank our staff, Lance Johnson. They did a great staff report on this too, and you, Councilor DeMott, for carrying this forward.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure, and I'm glad that you came up with this idea. It's a fantastic tribute. If you knew Bob, Bob was a connector. Bob loved to connect people to each other. A lot of the organizations you mentioned, I became part of because Bob introduced me to them, such as Rotary. And I remember I shared this at his service. A friend of mine who runs the Three Margaritas up in the Orchard, he and I were reminiscing about Bob. And if it wasn't for Bob, we wouldn't know each other. We're quite good friends. And it was really because Bob was at his restaurant and said, how would you like to come speak at the 710 Rotary Club? Bob always was sure to get a good program for us to listen to. So with that, I want to present this to you. It says the City of Westminster, by vote of the City Council on this day, the 28th of February, 2022, do attest the naming of certain city facilities as follows. The England Park Greenhouse Center will now formally be named the Briggs Greenhouse Center, which is a beautiful center. Congratulations.
Councilors Bill number 13. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to pass Council Bill number 13 on first reading, implementing water rate adjustments for 2022 by amending the section 8-7-7 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Is there a second? Mayor, Councilor Seymour?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill 13. Is there any further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out a couple of things about this, and I know that we've certainly heard a lot of opinions on this over the years as well as tonight. This is by no means the end of the conversation. However, if we were to make a change that would help people and provide some relief by summer, we had to come up with something. And when I say something, this wasn't as the term willy-nilly, which I made fun of a couple days ago, and I swear every public meeting I've been to for the last month, somebody has said willy-nilly. But this was not that. This was a collaboration between council, starting with the starting point, which I think my colleagues, Councilor Baker and Seymour, as a starting point for what we came up with, in collaboration with staff, was something that both staff and council members in the majority have decided to get behind. I did a little bit of homework on exactly what this is compared to 2018, being that 2018 in my mind is where this really went wonky, to use another silly term. But if I look at some of the larger lot size costs, if you look at 2018, even though the tiers are a little bit different in price, a little more expensive, you actually are netting just for water. Mind you, this doesn't take into account some of the other fixed fees in the sewer. You're actually paying less than you were in 2018. However, with staff's help, we're coming up with something that they're comfortable with that provides balance. It provides some room for us to decide what we're doing with the water plant, because we haven't decided yet what we're doing with that, and that's going to take time. However, we need to at least put away some money and plan for it. And the reason that is because we made some adjustments to the tiers. The first tier is actually through the first 8,000 gallons, and the third tier actually doesn't start till 40,000 gallons. The desire, it was in the majority, told staff that they would like them to continue to investigate what it looks like to do something more along the lines of Thornton. However, that's going to take some time to do. So there's no way possible that we could get that work done by summer and see if that's a reasonable and safe way for us to do our billing, I guess is the best way to put it. So to me, this is something that not everybody got everything they wanted. It's something reasonable that staff thinks is responsible, and it sets us up for success. And that really is the goal, is to what can we be successful with as affordable as possible. So I am pleased to support this. I do wish that we could have figured out the lot size thing sooner. However, that's just not feasible right now, and we need to do something that provides all residents across each tier some sort of relief going into the summer.
Councilor Namella?
I know that a lot of the community, but not all of the community, has put some pressure on council to come up with a method to reduce the water rates. However, that's not the entire community. There are community members that have expressed to us that they want us to think first about the long-term resilience of our utility and the quality of our water, and to keep that in our minds as well. And the reservation I have is pretty significant with respect to where we are right now. I don't think we have all of the information we need to make a decision that will set us up for a long-term resilience with our utility. In the study session that we had with our staff, we had talked about the $24 million capital set aside for improvements to our utility. And we were told that that's a pretty small number in comparison to what we actually need for a $4 billion utility in terms of maintaining it and keeping it up to the highest standard, or even hopefully a decent enough standard to ensure that we have clean water. So I am concerned about just that number, the $24 million number that we're using as our basis. The other concern I have is the impact that this proposal has on our general fund revenues. We are dipping into those in order to help pay for these water reductions. And that to me means we're not a utility that is self-sufficient. Instead, we are subsidizing that utility with our other tax revenues that are coming into the city. If we're going to do that, maybe we have to go back to the community and ask for another % tax increase to pay for that service, if it's now an additional service that we're going to be providing out of our general fund. So I'm not opposed to having lower rates, but we have to be thinking about how do we pay for them? Because we have to pay for them. It's not that we just get reduced rates and magically our utility will adjust to that. This scenario shows that we're in the black, quote unquote, for about 10 years. We're setting aside $150 million for some type of water treatment facility improvement. And I really am excited that we are going to be doing this analysis on Semper, going a deeper dive to see, what can we do there. I want to make sure that my colleagues have buy-in in the ultimate decision in what our water treatment facility need is. So, but we haven't done that yet. And we don't know if that $150 million is sufficient or not, or to what extent it shows our water, it ensures that we'll have high quality water and service delivery over time. So the other piece that you might notice in this scenario is that we are injecting an additional $100 million between the years 2025 and 2028 just to stay in the black on this proposal. So that is concerning because we can only feasibly pay for this, bring this kind of debt into our utility function so many times before we're maxed out. So that is a concern that is unanswered for me. And then we're in the red. So how do we solve that? And staff has not shown us that. They typically plan out 15 years to ensure that our water utility is in the black for that long, but we're only out to 10 years. And there's just unanswered questions for me. So for me, I'd rather have more information. I know folks have said, well, why, you have enough information. Well, I've just kind of laid out what is still missing. And there are some, for me, and probably for many others, questions that still need to be answered so that we can make a responsible decision. So that's where I said I will be voting no on this as a result, but know that I still want to work with my colleagues to find a way to have, to ultimately live affordably in Westminster. It's not just about our water rates. It goes well beyond. So that will be something we'll all be tackling together.
Councilor Emmons?
Yes, I wanted to thank my colleagues, Councilor Seymour and Councilor Baker, for their work with staff on getting it to this point. I think we got here a lot faster because of it, because of your work and staff's efforts on working through all of these. So thank you for that. And then the rest of my colleagues, thank you for working through the options together and having a discussion. I think, being on here for 2 years, I think we've actually come to a point where we're actually discussing and trying to find a valid solution that could be a workable solution for most, if not all. And I think that, through the variety of discussions from 2018 prior and 2018 till now, safety and quality of our water has always been top priority. I want to say, and I would assume for any council. So I will continue to work with my colleagues on that. There are regulations that we need to continue to meet, and just at a federal standard that we are required to meet. So those will not be a misstep in reducing these water rates. And let me remind our residents that this is a 1-year decision. This is a 1-year, and now it's even less than a year decision. This is not a 10-year decision. This is not a decision that we don't address on a yearly basis. This needs to be addressed and looked at on an annual basis. So this is not a long-term thing, a long-term decision that we are making. This is a 2022 decision. So, through touring multiple 2 facilities that we have, they are well kept, and that is a testament to our staff. I've been through a lot of facilities in my career, and they are well maintained. To my surprise, for a facility that has electrical and water together combined, great work on that. Obviously, there's more to meet the eye on the organic organs of the system, but the facilities, to my surprise, were very well kept. This isn't a decision that's made in haste. I've been on here 2 years in 2019, and we've been working on a solution for the past 2 years, or at least trying to. And it needs to be strategic and responsible. And I feel that I have enough information over the last 2 years to come to a decision tonight and making this vote, and I will be in support of it.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point a couple other things out from the conversations in effort to try to get everybody on board with this option. I will also mention that option E, which if you look at our packet, that was the option that staff brought forward, taking the recommendations that Councilor Baker and Seymour came up with and looking at how we could balance. And that 10-year spot is important because that's a point in time when they can rebalance. So it doesn't necessarily mean we fall off and we're, the sky's falling. It's a point when they rebalance the books. And a lot of times with these kind of entities, that's the way they work. If you look at like the way school debt does it, typically if you ever see the way that they add new bonds and mills to school debt and it doesn't impact your pocket, it's because they look at other debt that falls off and then they add new debt. It's a way that governments balance debt versus cash on hand and are able to keep things solvent. So I only bring that up because staff worked really hard to get us to a place where they could say, this is best practice. This is something we're comfortable with. The other thing I want to mention is throughout the night when we looked at these options, this option had 5 support, 2 against. It was originally 2 different supporters and 2 against. And the 2 that are now, the 5-2 is a different 5-2 that we're ending up with if it sticks the way it was at the end of that meeting. And part of the change was we asked because 2 members felt that this wasn't going to do enough for people with large lots when we couldn't accommodate looking at something that actually fits at a large lot like Thornton does. And so I made the recommendation, what if we expanded that lot? We originally talked about a 30,000 and we landed on 40,000 being a number that we thought would impact more residents, but it was something that staff also said would be a minute enough change that it wasn't going to throw off the balance of that 10-year mark. And that is where we landed. And so, and that change was wholly an effort to get 7 people up here on board. So if you didn't have time to listen to that meeting, it's worth listening to. I think everybody had good points no matter where they end up on the end of this. I think we all care about having safe, clean drinking water, but we do need to make a point and move forward. Otherwise, we're going to miss the summer months and we're not going to be able to help folks while we try to make some of these long-term decisions.
Anyone else? Councilor Baker? Councilor Seymour? Councilor Izadi? Nope. I just wanted to say, this is the spreadsheet we started with. I had received a call earlier in the week before last week's study session that just wanted us to go with one of these that we had already looked at. We wouldn't have seen the other 2. We happened to have strategic planning last week, so I called city manager and said, can we add yet another study session last week to it? Because I don't call around asking how people are voting. I have not talked to any one of these people about this sheet and how they land on it. I heard at the last study session where they landed on it and heard all of their rationale. I know when we came to it, I know city manager had also met with Nirmela and Azadi, which gave us the fourth option, and then staff came listening to everybody, all 7 voices. They came to option E, which, as Mayor Pro Tem said, ended up being an A and a B. I am so proud of that discussion that we've had along the way, and I'm sorry for anyone that has called and wanted just to push ahead and ask me to call the city manager and have it put on the agenda. That's not how we can do business. We have to do it in the manner we have been doing it. We will continue to do it, and it's deserving of you all to either listen to the study sessions or come here and hear what we have to say. But I don't disagree. We have to look long-term, but right now we have to get through this summer. And to do that, we had to make a decision sooner than later. They have to have some time to make these adjustments with how the water bill comes out. Long-term, absolutely. We have to look at long-term. The quality and the quantity of water. I told City Manager Andrews this afternoon as we were just looking at this evening and did we have everything ready to go? I said, we really haven't asked the question, do we have enough water? But they're going to be monitoring, he promised me. And that's the big question. How are we going to be at build out? What water do we have? Because my belief is we build to the water we have. We don't build and then figure out the water scenario. And that's how it felt to me before. And infrastructure has to be the best. And we need that to know that we need the quality and clean water. So those were the things. We went over option A, option B and C, and the D. And then when staff presented the E, we even went further than that. I am voting for this tonight because in looking at everything, trying to get through the summer season with people's gardens and whatnot, they know I often mentioned if we just, like in the first tier, if we just gave them 2,000 more, they may not have to go into that second tier. And when the 40,000 was presented for tier 3, again, the 2 may not have to go into 3 because of that. So there's some days that I just think when you have everybody mad at you, maybe you're making a good decision. I don't know. But I know we're making it carefully. I know that it isn't the last decision we make. And I know we all want to see the Thornton study and see how that all works. I have questions around it and to see, but the time isn't here to create that today. So that's where I stand. And if there's nothing further, roll call, please.
Councillor Nirmela.
No.
Councillor Seymour.
Yes.
Councillor Baker.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
Yes.
Councillor Azadi.
No.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 5-2.
Can I vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Emmons. I knew that wasn't right. I just didn't know. I apologize. Councillor Emmons.
Sorry. 3 times a yes.
I apologize. The motion passes on a 5-2 vote.
Thank you. That brings us to item D1, adopt resolution number 8. Councillor Seymour?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 8, authorizing the city manager to execute a subword agreement between the City of Westminster and the Colorado Department of Transportation pertaining to the receipt of $190,417 of federal funds for the 72nd Avenue Corridor Study Plan.
Councillor Emmons.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution 8. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councillor Seymour.
Yes.
Councillor Baker.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
Yes.
Councillor Emmons.
Yes.
Councillor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
And Councillor Nirmela.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote. Counselor Seymour?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 9, authorizing the city manager to accept Denver Regional Council of Governments Community Mobility Planning and Implementation set-aside grant funds for the 72nd Avenue Corridor Study and Plan.
Second.
It's been moved and second to adopt Resolution 9. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. And sorry, I tried to get in earlier. I have a question, and it's just more so for ongoing once we get past this. With any of these studies, one being top of mind when we look at this is the Bradburn area study that we've done. We do these studies. What's the teeth in it? What's the value add of spending the money to make sure that whatever they come out of the study is I want to make sure that it has the imprint of the community and the vision of the community that lives there, not folks that don't live there, but B, that we actually are getting value out of the taxpayer dollar that we're allocating to this.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd ask Dave Downing, our Director of Community Development, to respond to that question.
So Mayor Pro Tem, I'm smiling because I'm going to be able to brag to my staff tomorrow. About 2 weeks ago, I said, Mayor Pro Tem's going to ask me if we're just doing another study. And we study and study and never do anything.
I'm consistent, if nothing else.
I know, I can read you like a book.
And did you win something?
I didn't bet. I should have. I should have. I wanted to assure you, and in fact, we put language in the staff report or this agenda memo you may have noticed. This isn't another study that's just going to be put on the shelf and wait and see what happens later. This is the actual study that we will use to inform our decision to approach council during CIP budgeting to ask money for a specific project. I think all of us realize, and any of us who drive along 72nd Avenue know that certainly we need superior pedestrian facilities. They're virtually non-existent there. This is the study that's going to determine what is that design going to look like? What will the cross section of the street look like? It'll require a lot of stakeholder input. We have lots of different stakeholders along 72nd Avenue. So there'll be a real intensive session to gather input, but I am confident that this is the study we need to let us approach you again to say, give us this many dollars to actually do some construction.
Okay, that's great, and I appreciate that. I guess my ask would be, as we move this forward, that this goes potentially even on the updates that we're going to get as we move through the strategic planning goals, so that we can see, quarterly updates on where this is actually at, and basically keep our finger on the pulse so that we can help assure that ends up being the case.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Counselor Baker. Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Counselor Nurmela.
Yes.
And Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
Counselor Seymour?
I move to pass Councilor Bill number 14 on first reading to appropriate grant funds to be received from the Denver Regional Council of Governments administered by the Colorado Department of Transportation for the 72nd Avenue Corridor Study and Plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill number 14. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Counselor Nurmela.
Yes.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
And Counselor Baker.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
Counselor Seymour?
Move to authorize payment of $39,383 to the project as part of the local agency matching funds grant requirement.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize payment of $39,583. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Counselor Nurmela.
Yes.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
Counselor Baker.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to resolution number 10. Counselor Emmons?
I move to adopt resolution number 10, establishing the 2022 calendar year interest rate at 5.25% for non-city funded public improvement recovery contracts and 2.23% for city-funded public improvements.
Counselor Baker?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Resolution 10. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Azadi,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Counselor Nermella,
Yes.
Counselor Seymour,
Yes.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott,
Yes.
and Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to 10F1. Counselor Emmons?
I move to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with a Moot Point Construction Company Incorporated in the amount of $400,000 plus a contingency in the amount of $40,000 for the stormwater open drainage maintenance 2022 through 2024 project.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass 10F1. Is there any further discussion? Oh, Counselor Baker?
Thank you, Mayor. This was one of the things I wanted to talk about. How did we get to the price on this? Because in our notes, we just have different things under different prices. So and it takes, well, how many days of jetpack have we planned? How many days of two-man crews, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to come up with the $400,000 to know that if some of these other, well, except for Summers Construction, that was goofy, but some of these other ones would have been a better price. How do we get to the $400,000 with Moot being the best?
Councilor Baker, I appreciate the question. Dave Downing is here to provide information for you.
Yes, and great question, Councilor Baker. The 7 work items that you see on the left-hand column of the chart with the bid results there, those are the most common work items that we encounter on these types of projects. And as you noted, you can't just add it up because the unit measurements are different for almost all of the 7 work items. What I can tell you is this, and why staff feels very comfortable making the recommendation to you, that our historical data shows that while we can't predict right now exact scope of each of the maintenance projects, by far, I would say the 2 work items that we encounter most on this type of projects are work item number 2, the cleaning of culverts and inlets, and work item number 7, the jet vac to clean out pipes and that sort of thing. You can see by looking then at the unit prices for just those items, the rows across for just that a Moot Point is the lowest of the bidders on those 2 most significant items. So while I can't tell you there's this exact difference in cost between a Moot Point and the next lowest, I can tell you with great certainty that a Moot Point would be the lowest on typical projects of this nature that we encounter. Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Counselor Nermella,
Yes.
Counselor Seymour,
Yes.
Counselor Baker, Mayor Pro Tem Demott, Counselor Emmons,
Yes.
and Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
I don't remember who was. Counselor Emmons?
I move, subject to annual appropriation of capital improvement project funds, to authorize the interim city manager to execute 2 additional contract amendments for the 2023 and 2024 contract years with a Moot Point Construction Company Incorporated, each with an annual expenditure of $400,000 plus a contingency in the amount of $40,000 for the stormwater open drainage maintenance 2024 through 2022 through 2024 project. The total authorized expenditure for this contract and amendment shall not exceed $1,320 for all 3 years.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass 10F2. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Nermella,
Yes.
Counselor Seymour,
Yes.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott,
Yes.
Counselor Emmons,
Yes.
Counselor Azadi,
Yes.
and Mayor McNally.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to 10G1. Counselor Namella?
I move to authorize the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Department to pursue Adams County open space grants during the 2022 spring cycle for the improvement of accessibility alternatives at the Swim and Fitness Center.
Counselor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass item 10G1. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
And Counselor Nermella.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
Counselor Namella?
I move to authorize the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Department to pursue Adams County open space during the 2022 spring cycle for assistance with the Legacy Ridge Golf Course, Windsor, and Foxshire Parks Reclaimed Irrigation Project.
Counselor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass 10G2. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Azadi?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question on the urgency of this. If anyone can speak to that, if this needs to be now or because it's $5 million for a golf course. I think we have a lot of things to pay for. So I'm curious what the criticality is.
Thank you for the question, Counselor. Lance Johnson here with our Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Department.
And before you answer that, I forgot to say thank you for all that you did to make everything happen tonight.
You're more than welcome.
And I know,
My pleasure.
I know when we first sent it in, it's gone through many different people. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Took us a while to get there, but we got there. Lance Johnson, Parks and Golf Manager. Answer your question, Counselor Azadi. Currently, the Legacy Ridge project is in process. So we have that project moving forward. We'd like to expand on that project. So this is just be using that request. We'd already have the matching funds to go with that request. So we're trying to expand our irrigation system both into Foxshire and Windsor Parks. So that project is already in progress. And so this would just be money, kind of bonus money for, I guess you could say, if we got that grant, to be able to improve our irrigation systems at both those parks.
And the urgency?
We would prefer to be get that grant, apply with that grant with this cycle. So we have that money so we can use it while the contractor's still on site at both Legacy and Walnut Creek. So I would say the urgency would be a little higher than normal.
And those projects need to be done, right?
We are in the process of doing those. That money's already been approved for both those irrigation projects, the golf courses, yes.
And I'm guessing it would be more cost if we waited.
Yes.
Higher.
Anything we wait on is going to be more expensive.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Namella, did you have something else?
Yeah, I was just going to commend staff on this. I think it's really creative to be looking at how you can make one improvement extend into additional park areas and actually save on potable water. This is saving like 8.5 million gallons. And so I just thought that was great. So
thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Counselor Nermella.
yes.
And Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to 10H. Counselor Seymour?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to execute a contract for 2022 with an option for 1-year extension in 2023 with CoCal Landscape Services, Inc. for a landscape maintenance service contract in the amount of $376,359 plus authorize up to $188,180 for irrigation parts and repairs, snow removal activities, and other related on-call maintenance services limited to 50% of the base bid per the contracted time and materials rate for a total authorized expenditure not to exceed $564,539.
Counselor Namella?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass 10H. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question. Okay. In the report, it had that as of 2020 and 2021, city continues to observe the care of more parcels. In 2022, thereby reducing the scope of the contract for the new lower 2022 not to exceed the amount of 500,064. Can you explain that a little bit more as far as what the contract covers and what we're covering and why it's reduced. I guess I'm uncertain, what the actual services that they provide are. Is it not? That was my question. It was what will their services provide specifically? Is it open space maintenance? I just don't want to undercut this budget where there needs to be areas of maintenance.
So any maintenance so CoCal's contract covers medians, right-of-ways, green belts, those types of things that we don't have the staff capacity to do maintenance on our own within parks and open space. So over the years, prices have increased, and we had a CPIU 2% increase last year, and then this year that will kick into effect also. So we've taken some more services in-house to try to kind of counterbalance that. So the services that were being done either by CoCal or with Parks and Open Space Group, we're not giving away anything. We're still doing all that maintenance. It's just we brought some more services in-house in order to make sure we balance our budget out with CoCal. So we won't be giving up any services.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Calculated. So I see it's a not to exceed amount.
Yeah. So if you take the original base bid, I think it's roughly about $399 from 2018. So the adjustments we've made to the base bid and the contract. Let me just see if I can find it. If it's in here, it should be in here someplace. So 376 is now the base bid that we're working on for 2022. And then you take 50% of that for the cap, the extra services. You take that 376 and the 188, and that gives us the 564.
Okay, thanks.
Roll call, please. Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Councillor Emmons.
Yes.
Councillor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councillor Nermella.
Yes.
Councillor Seymour.
Yes.
And Councillor Baker.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to 10I, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize the interim city manager to execute a negotiated contract with Burns and McDonnell Engineering Company, Inc. in the amount of $545,650 for engineering design services for the Big Dry Creek wastewater treatment facility, electrical systems repair and replacement project, and authorize a contingency amount in the amount of $55,000 for the total expenditure of $600,650.
Councillor Seymour.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass item 10I. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be voting no on this. We're not taking the low bid. Isn't that the whole point of this exercise, is to get the best price? And I find the reasons for really rejecting the low bidder to be prejudiced. Okay, the low bidder's a new guy. Well, I expect new guys to be hungry. I expect new guys to make the best price officer. And I'm open to that. It's almost to me like we're choosing between IBM and Apple. And yeah, I know there's comfort in choosing IBM and we're all comfortable with IBM, but Apple's the better price. Okay. Plus also, there's a lot of money here that's a sole source contract, unbidded contract. Shouldn't have been done that way. If we decided we needed that, we either should have changed the RFP and said, oh, besides this first item in needs, we have another item needs. And we didn't do that. So I think we're violating it. We're keeping new people out of the system, and we shouldn't do that. We should take a chance on new people, and we have in our contracts protections if something went bad. I'd love to change my colleagues' minds on this. Thank you.
Any further? Oh, Councillor Nermella.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think we all care about ensuring that we're utilizing our city funds responsibly. I think there's a time and a place for taking a risk with somebody new, but without a proven track record, and the level of risk that this would place on our one treatment center, and potentially, hopefully we would be able to do this repair without having the facility go down for any period of time. So I don't think that's a level of risk that I'm comfortable taking. And that's why I think that staff made the right decision in choosing the best value contract.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. And again, though I share my colleagues' want to go cheaper and more thrift with things, you're going to use the example of computers. I kind of look at this the same way. For example, multiple companies I've come in and taken over IT departments, they've looked at things like, I'll give you an example. It seems like Mac users, they're always comfortable with the fact that a Mac costs more because that's what a Mac costs. And if a person wants a Mac, they buy that. I've seen more times than not when they look at Windows machines, they'll go with something like an Asus or one of the lower level ones that cost $500 a pop. I can tell you as somebody who runs an IT department, I spend more time and costs me more money in the long run when we spend less on those machines because they're more trouble. So when I look at what the explanation in the pre-meeting was for this, it makes sense to me. I am glad to hear that staff did mention that there could be other jobs where they would look at that other new player to potentially give them business and see how they work out. But for this one, I think it's more of a, to me, it's more of a, you get what you pay for. Sometimes you go with the tested one and sometimes that costs you more money, but in certain circumstances it makes sense. And I think in this circumstance, it does make sense.
Anyone? Oh, Councilor Seymour?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with my colleagues on both sides of this in that I do believe that we should have done a separate bid for the second part, the ARC. I'm going to, hey, thank you. ARC Flash. Thank you. Testing and update on that. I think we should have separated that out, but in the aggregate, I find myself, I would have voted yes on both parts. So I'll be voting in favor of this.
For me, I just want to thank staff because you're okay with us questioning, and we should be questioning because we don't understand this stuff. And this isn't our money, it's our citizens' money. So I know you get that, but I appreciate you telling us because we don't work at each of these levels. We're asking you questions. And the response I heard tonight was one that makes total sense. And I wouldn't risk it with somebody that hasn't done this before either. And I heard them say they will look and see if they have other projects where they can help this person or see if they can be tried out in something else. So we'll see how those bids go. But for this one, I'm voting yes. Roll call, please.
Counselor Emmons?
Yes.
Counselor Azadi?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Counselor Nurmela?
Yes.
Counselor Seymour?
Yes.
Counselor Baker?
Oh,
Mayor Pro Tem Demott?
Yes.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item 10J. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the additional funding for fiscal year 2022 for the city's contribution to the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport Community Noise Roundtable.
Councilor Seymour?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass item 10J. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Baker?
yes, I would like to hear really Counselor Emmons' opinion. Do you think this is the best money? You are our representative to this thing. Thank you.
But I was Mayor Pro Tem is the representative. I was in his place because he could not attend, which led me to bringing forward this information. So, and he is newly, because I was not on it, it was actually Counselor Scully, previous council, that was the liaison. I was the backup for that. So I've been backup, quarterback chair. So this one came forward in the last meeting, and they are, and I apologize, I only have the information that was presented in the packet as well as in the meeting during that time, but they've been working on this for the last couple sessions in that roundtable discussion. And this is bringing forward a study that would look at how to mitigate noise for the community, for the surrounding area of the airport. And they are looking for extra funds for 2 consultants. One is to one consultant is to facilitate the meetings. So to be the essentially the mayor of the roundtable and help navigate those tough discussions. Right now, it's just I believe it's the Superior, the city of Superior that's leading the meetings, and it's very awkward when you get in those contentious discussions to not have a neutral party help facilitate past those discussions. So they're looking for that. They also will hold the meeting minutes and then do any other facilitation that's required of the group. That's one. The other one is this study. There were two on the table. One was ABC times 2, and the other one was HMMC. Yes, thank you. Was the other one. They were looking at that one specifically because it is a new player. They were concerned with the other one that they might have, I guess, I don't know. Yeah, like a conflict of interest for working with other people from that round table that they wouldn't be looking at the whole. Having this new contractor or consultant, they are hopeful that they will look at all 8 entities, now 8 with Louisville coming on board. But they are looking at them to look at us as a whole on the 8 communities surrounding that would help mitigate noise for our community members. This has been an issue for our community from the time that we've been on council, 2019. I'm sure it's been even prior to 2019 for the concerns coming in. I will tell you my personal opinion from the outside coming into this conversation. I didn't feel like I personally had enough information during that meeting to even understand the background approach to what they were trying to do with the study. I know where they're trying to go is trying to mitigate the noise. However, I don't think that they have enough. I feel like this goes back to Mayor Pro Tem's point as far as what study has teeth. What will this do in the long run, right? And so that is my concern as far as if we conduct this study, is this going to be another study that sits on the shelf that we can't help, that we're just adding more dollars to? So that was one of my concerns. And the other one then too is that I don't know enough to say that I don't know to put money towards it, that it could help. Having a facilitator and having that communication at the federal level and at the city level and at the county level and bridging all of those different voices might be helpful to have that study. I don't know, because I just don't feel like I have enough. And maybe I'm going to pitch it to you.
I did get a phone call about this today from Commissioner Kraft-Tharp, and she wanted to know if we had any questions around it, which I thought was helpful since I wasn't able to be at the meeting. And so I know that the portion of this that they talked about in the meeting prior to the one that you attended was some of that facilitation. And it's around, some of the funds are going to the fact that we need to decide what this is really going to do. So it's not just a bunch of electeds talking to each other, not getting anything done, frankly. Especially when you have different municipalities who have different concerns or different levels of concern. So I am behind that. But this study specifically, what Commissioner Kraft-Tharp shared with me is this study is a one-time study. So not all of these extra funds are going to be each year. This specific study is actually going to get experts who will work with the actual pilots that pilot out of the airport. And it's a group that actually works with pilots so that they can understand the egress and degress and actually think what ways can we actually impact this? Because as we've spoke before, there's a lot of really federal regulations that are around this. So getting ideas from the people who actually understand that and understand actually flying up there makes a lot of sense to me. And so I was really thankful that she decided to call and ask if we had any questions, because that portion of it I didn't understand clearly until I had a conversation with her today. So to your point, whether or not it's worth it, I think it is for that level of money one time, because I certainly have heard plenty of concern from folks about the noise from the airport. But at the same time, we have to balance with all things. There's a lot of commerce that airport is bringing into our area. So I think that this is a good step in order to try to find out from the people actually flying planes how we might be able to actually make an impact.
Well, I mean, that's what I wanted. I wanted your opinion because you are this council's representative. And I think that gives you some latitude because I think another study on this is ridiculous. It's like studying the ocean and whether it sends sea salt up.
Yeah.
So, but if you think it's worth it, fine.
I totally understand. I'm no fan of extra studies. So I just think that this one probably is going to be something that actually gives that group some direction.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Azadi,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Counselor Nermella,
Yes.
Counselor Seymour,
Yes.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott, and Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to Councilor's Bill number 12, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to pass Councilor Bill number 12 on second reading, amending Title I of the Westminster Municipal Code by the addition of Chapter 35 regarding collective bargaining for our police officers.
Counselor Seymour. Oh, sorry. Counselor Emmons.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill number 12. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Counselor Nermella,
Yes.
Counselor Seymour,
Yes.
Counselor Baker,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott,
Yes.
Counselor Emmons,
Yes.
and Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
And I had an email from Dave Acunto, who is the president of the FOP, and he has a sick one at home, so couldn't be here, but I promised I would share that with all of you, and he thanks everybody. Do we have reason for executive session?
We do, Mayor. If I could. We have two agendized executive sessions that are post-meeting. The first one is for consultation with the city attorney for the purpose of receiving direction for negotiations and settlement authority for a scheduled mediation regarding the estate of Ronald Romero versus the City of Westminster lawsuit pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 246402 4B and E1, as well as sections 111.3C3 and 7 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Poll everybody.
Good.
I'm polling to make sure that everyone is okay with going into executive session with the consultation with city attorney for the purpose of receiving direction for negotiations and settlement authority. Counselor Baker.
Really, yes on both 1 and 2.
Yes.
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 And our second one?
Thank you, Mayor. The second executive session that's proposed for the evening is to discuss the possible trade of city-owned property at Carol Butts Park with Highland Hills Park and Recreation District, and to instruct the city's negotiators as authorized by Westminster Municipal Code 111.3C2 and 7, as well as Colorado Revised Statute 246402 4A and E1.
And is everyone willing to go into executive session for number 2, Mr. Baker? Or
Yes.
Counselor Baker? Counselor Seymour?
Yes.
Counselor Emmons?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Counselor Numella?
Yes.
Counselor Izadi?
Yes.
And it is 9:19, and this meeting is adjourned, and we will take a 10-minute break before we head into executive session.